Hello, everybody. I wanted to give you an update on the Colombian visa situation. I know a lot of you have reached out and shown concern and wanted to know what was going on, and I really appreciate that. So I'll try to provide as much of an update as I can right now. Hey, I've got some free time. I'm in Airbnb in Bogota right now. So for those of you who are new, or who aren't familiar with the situation, basically back in May, I had my Colombian visa rejected, and this was an investor's visa. I made a significant investment. I'll just say almost $30,000 that I invested in a business in Colombia. I see Colombia as a place with a lot of promise, and it was a very strange thing happened. They rejected that visa, and then I had to very hurriedly leave the country. And then for the past 6 months, I've been in and out of Colombia because I'm then a tourist, and so I have to watch my days. You have to do things like whenever you travel into the country, show some kind of outbound travel as well. So it's been very, very convenient, and I had my interview for reapplying this morning because you have to wait 6 months to reapply. So this whole saga started actually back in April. And as far as it being, I guess, a tumultuous time or a very stressful time, it started back in roughly April. I had to kind of go last minute to get an extension on my previous visa, and I ended up having to cancel or reschedule an interview with Tynan, who we eventually got that to happen because of that. And so, ever since then, it has been extremely stressful, and a lot of you come out of the woodwork to show your support, and I really appreciate that. So, so I'll try to tell the story of the various beats of kind of what has been happening. And I don't know if it's going to be interesting at all, because it's really just a lot of crap, kind of one thing after another. And I'm not sure how good of a story it even makes, but here it is. And I'll just try to have to do some prompt talking. So I had the visa rejected. I had to leave the country really quickly then and come back as a tourist. And then I had to really watch my days. And so what I did is I did a sort of a temporary exile in Peru. I went to Cusco, Peru for 2 weeks. I came back, and I was looking at it because I was looking at my days in the country as like I can apply on a certain day, and I want to have some wiggle room after that to be able to decide what to do or be able to wait for the application to process, to have a little bit of wiggle room and figure out what to do. So that's been my aim from the beginning. And so I went to Peru for 2 weeks, came back, and then I left again for a period of time, and then came back. And I came back to a surprise. Where did I go? I guess I went to Tampa for a bachata festival that I probably wouldn't have gone to if it wasn't for this whole situation, but I needed excuses to get out of the country. So that was one of the many trips that I took was to Tampa. Had a great time, but probably wouldn't have taken the trip otherwise. So I arrived back and found that, I don't have as many days as I thought I did, because you get the 90-day tour stamp, and then they count again after that, and then they give you another 90-day tour stamp. You have 180 days throughout a calendar year to be as a tourist. Well, I didn't have as many days as I thought, because it turned out that the extension to my prior visa that I had counted against those days. So instead of 90 days, the guy writes 72, and it's this whole it's a stressful situation. I'm just arrived from a trip, and I think that I've planned everything, and I'm thinking about all the days that I have until my tourist days are over, and I'm thinking about how much space I've got after my after applying for the visa again, my target date being November 9th, the day that I'm recording this. And yeah, so I'm arriving, and then this immigration agent tells me that no, that's not correct. You only have 72 days. So I had, I guess, 18 days fewer than I thought, because it turned out that the extension that I had, um, in waiting for my previous visa to get processed and eventually rejected, that extension counted towards my tourist days, which was something that I wasn't told by any professionals that I spoke to. It was something that I hadn't considered, because they provide those extensions sometimes with tourist stamps, but that wasn't the case. And after all, it's an extension, so it's an extension of the visa. It I don't so I still don't understand how that counts against a different form of immigration status. So that freaked me out a bit, and but it still looked like I was going to have a few days to get past the day that I was going to be applying, which is today. So with that math, it was looking like, okay, I am going to apply November 9th. There's going to be a 3-day weekend. And then, November 12th, I have to leave if I'm not accepted. And I am told by my lawyer I should get an answer the same day if I go and apply in person in Bogota. And so I'm thinking, well, at least it's not as much time as I thought I had, but at least it reaches beyond that. So that went on for a while. I kind of forgot about it for a couple weeks, I suppose. And then as I'm continuing to prepare for this application, I get an email from my lawyer one evening. It was a couple Tuesdays ago, I think. I got an email from my lawyer, and I'm going through all the different all the different scenarios, and coming up with contingency plans for what do I do if I'm rejected. And also I'm thinking about, well, what are, because there's been surprises so far. So I'm really trying to, like the negative visualization that Jason Fried talked about in his recent episode. I'm really trying to negatively visualize as best I can all the possible things that can go wrong. And this has been an interesting skill the last several months, is that I really have learned a lot about really thinking through all the possible things that could happen in a given situation, and thinking through, what are my different options and different plans, and having some kind of plan for various things that can happen. And so I'm going through that, and I'm thinking, I don't know, there's those 3 days. I'm supposedly going to get this answer on the same day, and then I have no time, no wiggle room whatsoever to make a decision about what to do about the apartment that I have, about some of the stuff that I've accumulated that I can't so easily just lug around the world with me. I need a little more than 72 hours to, one, get from Bogota to Medellin, but also to think about what to do. And so I'm thinking through that, and I'm like thinking, this is there's a lot of things that could go wrong here. I don't know what, because this is Colombia, and I don't always understand what's going on, and also a lot of things just don't work as well as they do in say like the United States, or but a lot of stuff goes wrong anyway. So I'm thinking through that, and so I go through different scenarios, emailing my lawyer, and then I'm asking for different sort of predictions, like what are the chances of this thing happening and that thing happening and stuff. And he says this thing that really sets me off. It really starts to worry me. And that was that he said 50-50 chance. And I I try to get some clarification from him on that. And he says, yeah, 50. Oh, I think it's 50-50 that, that you get the visa. And I'm like, what? Okay, so I that really freaks me out. I'm doing the math. It's Tuesday night. I Wednesday morning immediately get up and think, okay, I need to buy some more days. I need to get out of the country again and have a little bit more wiggle room than this 3 days, because that's not good. And so I'm thinking about what I can do. One of the things I think about is like, well, I could go to Panama because that's the closest place, most flights, cheapest flights. It's a pretty safe place. You can drink the water. It's it's very civilized. There's a lot of infrastructure and stuff. So Panama is a good place to go. However, I don't know anybody in Panama. I don't know anything about Panama. I hear it's not that much fun. The weather doesn't look like fun. It's 85 degrees with 85% humidity. And it rains a lot, etc. And I'm thinking, well, I'm thinking about my mental health in this equation too. Is like, well, all right, I need to leave. I should leave for 5 days or so, but how am I going to feel if I am just stuck in Panama City, and trying to get my work done, and what is my morale going to be like in a situation like that? And I'm thinking there's got to be something else. Maybe there is a conference going on or something. And so I find out, Jeff Goins, who's been on the show 2 times, and I've been on his show, Jeff Goins is having a conference this weekend. It's the tribe conference. And I'm thinking, well, that's actually pretty fortuitous that that's going on, because I'm looking at the roster and I see, wow, Todd Henry's speaking. I haven't met Todd in person. He's been on the show. I've been on his show. Jeff Goins is going to be there. I haven't met Jeff before in person. There were a bunch of other speakers that I was interested in meeting in person and stuff. So I thought, well, okay, this is actually kind of fortuitous. I should try to go to this conference. And I'm looking at the expenses for it all, and last minute flight. It's Wednesday morning, and I'm making this decision, and this conference starts Friday evening in Nashville, and I'm in Colombia. And so eventually, by like noon Wednesday, I have bought a ticket to Tribe. I've bought tickets to Nashville for Thursday. I've booked a hotel nearby in Franklin, Tennessee, where that conference is. And, fortunately, I have quite a few points accumulated. I've been writing about that in my income reports about how I get more points now from the ad spend than I do, but it's also a lot of just points that have been accumulated over the years. And so it ended up not costing me a whole lot to go to the conference, but I go to the conference and I have a great time there. I meet people who have who listen to the podcast and who have read my stuff, and that's always exciting to me. I don't know, it always still just kind of blows my mind, because I'm just sitting in my closet talking, and that people are out there listening. That's really cool. So that was a great experience. Actually, it was funny because I go to the conference and I sit down at a table, and I introduce myself to the woman at the table, and I ask her where she came from, and I don't remember exactly what it was that she said, but it was like, oh, she knew where I had come from. So I guess she, Tracy, hello, Tracy, if you're listening. So I guess Tracy reads reads my stuff on Medium or listens to the podcast. So that was all very cool. And then so I'm coming back from Tennessee, and I got to see Jason Shamanik, who was the technology editor of Design for Hackers, good longtime friend of mine, and I hadn't seen him in, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. And he's a Patreon supporter as well. So that was cool. It turned out to be a nice thing that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this whole snafu and all this drama, which is cool. I mean, there's been a number of moments, visiting friends in Chicago, or being at Machu Picchu, or the Tribe Conference, these things that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't in this situation. Oh, and going to the Bachata Conference as well. Like, I probably wouldn't have done these things. It's a lot more traveling. It's a lot more spending of money than I would normally do. It's a lot less doing of work, like writing. I'm behind on what I would like to write, so it was very cool to see that, to have that happen, to be able to go to the conference and enjoy that. And so, and when you're dealing with situations like this, there's always a but. I again arrived back from Nashville. It's a long trip, It takes you all day to get from Nashville to Medellin, and I can't eat food on planes, so I'm always starving whenever I arrive. And I arrive at immigration, and the immigration officer looks at my immigration form where I say, okay, well, I've got 18 days left. 18 days. I've really pushed it, so I have more time after, I'll have like almost a week or 2 weeks after I apply for my visa to be able to know what to do, what should I do with my stuff, what should I do with my apartment, etc. Have some kind of a plan. But this immigration officer starts looking at all the stamps on my passport, and there's on my passport, and there's a lot, and then there's also like that I had that extension as well, and she says, "You don't have 18 days. You've got 11 days." And of course, in that moment, I'm like, "No, you were wrong. I've looked this over. In fact, look at this stamp on the passport. It says 72 days, and then I was here for what would that be? 54 days after the 72-day stamp, and so your math is off." But she goes down the list of all the dates, and I'm not seeing a calendar here, so I'm just kind of like watching her write this stuff on paper, and she's explaining to me the number of days that I have, and somehow it goes from 11 to 9 because she forgot some days, and I'm pissed. I'm like, no, this is not correct. Probably I'm less nice than that. And, she kind of brings over a supervisor, like, I'm getting into trouble with immigration here. Eventually, her supervisor says, "Hey, come with me." And he takes me and doesn't take me. He leads me into this room and is like, "Sit down over here." And I don't really understand exactly what he was saying in that moment. My brain is just on fire right now because I'm thinking, if this is true, then this is a very big problem, because 9 days won't even get me to the point where I can apply for my visa. So I go from thinking that I have plenty of time. I've got like a week after I apply for my visa to not even being able to get to applying for my visa. And I'm just getting back from a trip that cost me, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever, and a week of time, 5 days of time, a week of time that I took last minute. And so I'm trying to go over the numbers, in this room, and I don't know what they're doing with me. Am I in big trouble now? I'm not sure, but I'm just kind of trying to calmly go through the numbers on my phone. And it's very hard. I'm surprised there's not an app for this, that like counting the number of days and keeping track of the number of days that you spend in a country is very difficult, especially when you consider that, the day you arrived counts, the day that you left counts. So like even if it's in the same month, you can't really necessarily do just basic math with it. And so when a period of time is spanning over a couple months, then it's just really impossible to keep track. So eventually the supervisor comes back in to the room, and he kind of asked me have I got it figured out yet? And I'm like, no, I don't think this is right. And he's like, well, it's right. And if you don't accept that, you're going to have problems. And so I'm like, well, okay. What if I go home and look at it and I figure out that it's wrong? Well, then you can go to immigration and show them that. So I, as politely as I possibly can, because I'm just on fire, they have a good evening and leave and go home. And my poor cab driver's trying to talk to me. I'm like, hey, he drives me to the airport all the time, and I'm like, I really can't talk right now. And I'm just trying to think through this, like, what am I going to do? I don't even have time to go apply for this visa, and I just arrived from this long trip. What the hell am I going to do? And so I get home and I go through the numbers, and I find out she was right. This immigration officer was correct. She had counted the days correctly. And this was part of the discussion that happened at the immigration, which was, hey, this stamp says 72 days. I have 72 days left. And you even say in your math, it's been 54 days since that 72 days. So I've got 18 days. No. That guy made a mistake. That immigration officer, so when I was coming back from Tampa, and it was already complicated enough to count the number of days I had been in the country, that immigration officer, actually, who brought over one of his colleagues to verify his math, put 72 days on the stamp. And that was not true. I did not have 72 days at that point. I apparently had 63 days. So how hard is it to count the number of days that you spend in a country? It's so hard that not one, but two people whose pretty much their only job is to count the number of days tourists have to be in the country and stamp the passport and then write that number of days on there. Two of them working together still got it wrong. There's all these things are all things that there's mistakes that happen, and I become affected by those mistakes, and they're still my responsibility. It's still my fault, even though this guy messed up, because when I was looking through things, as I'm going over my entire plan, which is something I've spent so much time on over the last 7 or 6 months, as I'm going over my plan, I just look at this 72 that this immigration officer wrote on there, and I think, oh yeah, all right, well, whether the math is right or not, he wrote 72. I can trust that. I don't want to go over all these numbers here because, I mean, the immigration officer wrote 72 days, so I've got 72 days. Doesn't work that way, apparently. No, instead, you're limited to 180 days per calendar year. It doesn't matter what is written on your passport. So 72 days, and it becomes, so now I've got 9 days. I don't have time to get my visa, and so I'm going over everything. I'm thinking, well, all right, it's Tuesday night. Sorry, it's Wednesday night. It's not. It's Monday. I'm a little sleep deprived. Sorry. It's Monday night. I've got 9 days left. I need to make it to next Friday to be able to show up and apply for this visa. How am I going to do that? Oh, and by the way, tomorrow I have a webinar at 2 p.m. And then Thursday I have a podcast interview. And I love to be in my studio, in my little closet. And who can guarantee that you're going to get an Airbnb with good enough internet and quiet enough to record? So, but I decide, all right, well, I'm going to do my webinar tomorrow. And thank goodness I have so many systems that I've put in place because I work on this. I've been working on this creative productivity system that you've heard about on the show. And so I've got so many different systems that I've started to put into place that help me get this podcast done, that help me write books, that help me run webinars with just so much less effort. And so thank goodness I have those systems in place. You know, you haven't missed an episode of this podcast. It's still been coming out on time amidst all of this. And so I'm very thankful for having set those things up because, yeah. So I've got to, you know, how does that work? I think it's not even until the next morning because I arrive it's so late at night, and so the next morning I book a flight to Panama, and I book an Airbnb for 9 days. To go from Medellin to Panama and then go directly from Panama to Bogota to apply for this visa, which I arrived yesterday in order to do. I can't believe that was yesterday. Ooh. And so I booked that flight and I call my girlfriend in the morning and she's already hasn't seen me in a week because she was with me on that Tuesday night when I got that email and I said, oh my goodness, like I've gotta like leave. And so now I call her again to tell her, yeah, I've got to leave again for 9 days. So we try to work it out. So, okay, yeah, come over for like half an hour so we can at least see each other before I leave. And I don't know what's going to happen after this point. Come over right after the webinar. And so I do the webinar. That goes off without a hitch. And then she comes over and then for half an hour or so and then we catch up and I just go to the airport and hang out in Panama City. And I had a beautiful place. There's a beautiful view. I've heard bad things about Panama City, and sorry, people of Panama. I didn't enjoy my time in Panama City. Might have a little to do with the situation, but yeah, you can't walk to anything. It's just like torrential downpour very often, and of course, like I know nobody, and I'm falling behind in work, so it's not like I have a ton of time in addition to trying to deal with the visa application and all this last minute travel and just the stress of it. And I'm trying to take as good a care of myself as I can, because I know when you're in situations like this where suddenly there's some sort of disruption, some sort of stressor, like it can just go downhill really quick. So I'm trying my best to like take good care of myself, to sleep well, to eat well, to also be very vigilant wherever I am, because you can just become absent-minded, and God forbid, like some of my stuff gets stolen, or something else happens as a result of just these added stressors. So just trying to keep everything in order. Anyway, those 9 days are long. Those are a long 9 days. It's pretty lonely. I'm very bored. I guess I'm used to being lonely, but boredom is kind of tough. And and by the way, the place was nice, but not a nice place to record a podcast. In the listing, there was a little note that there was some construction noise during the day, but I saw in the picture there was this big walk-in closet that I figured, well, that should probably be, pretty insulated from the sound. But no, I mean, this was like, they were basically digging a parking garage to go beneath a building that was going up like next door. And so they were using some sort of like a pick to pick away the dirt or whatever sort of earth is there. And it sounded like a jackhammer, and it went all day long. So I mean, just to even be in the apartment, I'm putting in earplugs, trying to listen to white noise to get any sort of work done at all. So, and I have this podcast interview scheduled for Thursday, and it's with David Rock, who is the author of one of my favorite books ever, Your Brain at Work, and I've tried for years to get him on the show. And I'm thinking, I can't do this. I mean, I can't do the show. So I start to write the email, and I'm super defeated as well. I'm still adjusting to the calamity of arriving and suddenly having to leave within 24 hours. And I'm writing the email to cancel, and I just think, okay, there's got to be some sort of option. So I quickly search, and I find a co-working space, and I go over there to, it's called My Office. So hello, My Office, Panama. They had a conference room. I mean, there was some noise there, but they had a conference room. I booked the conference room for the next day. It was going to be, it's like $40 to rent this conference room, which is, Panama is not that cheap. Then I was at least able to pull off the interview and make it happen. I was in a different environment and stuff, so hopefully it still turned out all right as far as my presence of mind during the interview and stuff. And the sound's going to be not quite as good on my side, but I mean, it's an interview, so you're only hearing so much of me, hopefully. Then yesterday, I flew to Bogota, and I go to immigration. I've got, let's see, in my mind now, I guess it'll be 7 days at this point, because there was the day that I arrived. Oh, and then I left the next day. So that's 2 days. I was not even in town for 24 hours, and that's 2 days. That's the way that this stuff counts. So it's hard to keep track of. And so I go to the immigration officer, and he asked me why I'm there, and I'm like, well, to order a visa. And I'm nervous because I just have this entire experience of, especially with just over and over again, having these, in addition to the rejection, but having these bad experiences, it just has really put a pallor or colored my view of everything. And it's just very hard to see things positively. And so, yeah, he stamps my passport. And then he writes on there the number of days. And he writes 90 days, which I thought was kind of comical because he clearly just didn't really look things over. And the old me would have thought, oh, 90 days, I won the jackpot. I'm good till the end of the year. I'm good. But no, now I know better because I learned the hard way. That is not 90 days. I still have 7 days. And then that afternoon, or yesterday afternoon, I meet with my lawyer, and he's really been helping me prepare so much better than my previous lawyer. My previous lawyer, I got called in for an interview. I didn't apply in person. I got called in for an interview, and they didn't send me anything. I didn't really know what they'd ask. But he's really sent me questions, and I've brainstormed them, and I've even rehearsed a lot of these answers, and I've been thinking about it. It really helped me put on my hat for this thing, the hat that I want to have, which is that I'm applying for an investor visa here. I am an investor. Yes, I made the investment sort of casually, because I make all of my investments sort of casually. I don't fret over it too much. I do my research, or I have my ideas about doing things, but I don't put on that investor hat. And I thought about the reasons why I made this investment. That it's a tourism investment, it's a hospitality, like apartments that are rented out to people, and tourism's growing in Colombia. I have wanted to invest in Latin America, since I first traveled to Costa Rica in 2010, and I have been all over Latin America, and I decided Colombia was a place that I wanted to make an investment. And I had met the people with whom I invested, when I first came 6 years ago, like all these things that are true that I just needed to pull out and think about. And so we're going over all these things, and I feel so prepared and so confident about things. And I asked him to clarify this thing that kind of started off my whirlwind tour, which was that he wrote 50-50. And so I'm like, when you said 50-50, did you really mean like a 50% chance that I get the visa? No, not at all. No, I think I think you're going to get this visa, is his response. So it's funny, because if he hadn't told me that, then I would have been showing up at the immigration office having already overstayed, or not the immigration office, but the place where I order the visa. As far as you're concerned, it's the immigration office. That I would have already been delinquent, or in breach of the law, if this hadn't happened. And so I feel really good after this meeting, and I've got a nice Airbnb. It's very close to the ministry, which is where you order the visa. I cooked myself a dinner, and I hadn't slept hardly at all the night before, just worrying and ruminating about the visa. I finally did get some sleep last night, but still just a few hours. But I wake up feeling good. I'm feeling prepared, and I go in there to order the visa and have my interview, and all the preparation that we talked about kind of goes out the window, because I show up and the immigration officer is not very receptive to me engaging with him proactively. Like, he just wants me to give him the documents and kind of get out and then come back and ask some questions. So that's what I do. I give him the documents that we've collected and put together over the last several months. And, I come back and he asks me some questions. He just asked me, what is the business? And so I tell him pretty much what I just told you. And he says, okay, you'll hear from us in 5 days. 5 days. And I'm like, well, because I'm very worried at this point, because the last time that I had an interview here, they told me, we'll get back to you in 2 days. And I immediately thought, that means that they've rejected me. That means they've rejected it. And then when I emailed my lawyer about that, she was very surprised that they had not just given me an answer right away. And so in this case, I'm again very, very worried that they just don't want to tell you no into your face. And I'm thinking, well, I've got 7 days left Oh, and by the way, 5 days is 5 business days. So that's not accurate, really, because there's a 3-day weekend happening starting tomorrow. And so there's 10 days, really. It could be, so 5 business days is 10 days. And I've got 6 now. I've got 6 days. So I immediately am like, have to think this through again. Like, there's never been a time when I have had to make so many high stakes, last minute, multifactorial decisions in my life. Just like very quickly, very serious, or pretty serious decisions with a lot of different moving parts and a ton of different unknowns. And so I've started to get pretty good at it. I think I'm getting decent at it. I certainly have not made the right decisions all the time. There's lots of things I would have done differently in retrospect, but things could have been worse than they already are, which is pretty bad. So I'm thinking through what to do, whether I should just leave the country immediately. That's my initial plan, is leave the country immediately. I look at the flights, doesn't look so good. And I think, well, okay, I can go back to Medellin and start packing stuff. And I've got till Wednesday. It's Friday. I can start packing stuff. And, maybe we hear from them Friday afternoon today. By the way, that didn't happen. It's too late. Maybe we'll hear from them Tuesday. Maybe we'll hear from them Wednesday. Because as much as my lawyer made it sound like I would be getting an answer the same day, and, at this point, I think my lawyer's great, but I just trust no one. They're saying, well, it's not totally unusual for them to take some time because they want to investigate. And he was able to call somebody who works in the ministry, because he's down the street from the ministry. He works with them all the time. Able to call and find out, well, yeah, they're investigating the company. They want to look at the company, and that's pretty much all he knows. That it has nothing to do with me. They want to make sure the company is legit, which should be fine. I mean, unless there's something going on that I don't know about. But he did talk about some different scenarios of things that have gone on, or that they've been told to stay vigilant of. Things such as fake businesses that aren't real. This is a very real business. So supposedly, there's still a good chance that they're gonna accept this visa. But I have no way of knowing, and those are two different outcomes that have very different consequences. So the plan is that I'm going to, do that. Just be ready. Have, my sort of bug out bag. I don't know still whether I might just have to keep my apartment and just kind of double pay rent, just to not have to deal with that stuff. But yeah, I have to basically be ready to leave until the end of the year. So that's the plan, is to be ready to do that. And I'll be making the reservation, probably the flight, like same day, Wednesday, just like waiting. Have we heard from them? No? Okay, buy the ticket. And so definitely getting a lot of experience in buying last minute tickets too, which is something that I've never done before. And sometimes the prices aren't that bad. Sometimes they're really bad, which is why I'm in Bogota tonight, because I couldn't get a flight back to Medellin tonight. So I'll have to do it tomorrow. So then the plan will just be go back to Panama City and wait for some kind of a decision and then go from there. If it's accepted, I can just come right back to Colombia and go right back to my regular life and have 3 years of uninterrupted living my life that I've been living for the last 3 years, or at least up until 6 months ago when things started getting really crazy. Or if there's another rejection, then I've just got to go find somewhere to go until the end of the year, and then I can come back again as a tourist, and then once again count my days, and I'll certainly be better at it than I was before. But then I would have to find another option for how to stay in Colombia, because I think after 2 rejections, it's a pretty safe bet that you're just not going to get the visa for your $30,000 investment. So that's the update so far. I'll try to keep things updated on Twitter and on Instagram and maybe even on this podcast. Hopefully there will be a good, happy ending to this. I mean, that doesn't sound right. Maybe there will be a good and a positive result from this, or maybe not. And I don't know, maybe something cool will happen because of this complete, utter shit show. It's just definitely really, really high on the list of like the worst worst experiences of my life. This last 6 months, many moments of dealing with this have been really, really awful. But anyway, that's the update. I appreciate you caring. Thanks so much for your support and listening. Keep following me on Twitter and Instagram, etc. If you want like more up to the minute stuff, because if and when I have an acceptance, then you will know. Okay. Bye.